Hi, this is Teddy. Today's episode is about North Carolina. Here's some facts about North Carolina. North Carolina ranks 9th in population with a little over 10 million people. The capital of North Carolina is Raleigh, and the largest city is Charlotte. The governor of North Carolina is Democrat Roy Cooper, and the senators are Republicans Richard Burr and Tom Tillis. North Carolina sends 13 representatives to the U.S. House of Representatives, 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats. Bye, y'all.
Are you listening?
Hi everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. Sophie is out tonight with a sore throat, but joining me to talk about North Carolina politics is Anne Evangelista, who is the president of the North Carolina Young Democrats. Hi, Anne.
Hey.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So the first thing I want to ask, since we're only about a week after the hurricane hit, is just to say first that, I'm sorry about all the devastation in North Carolina. I was wondering if you could just sort of give a brief update where we are with the hurricane and what the recovery efforts look like.
Yeah, it's definitely been a busy, well, honestly now a week. The hurricane hit last Thursday, so we're coming up right on an entire week of dealing with this. Most of the efforts have been focused sort of down in the southeast part of the state. I live way up in the mountains, and even we saw some of the effects. We had landslides, flooding, even as far, up as towards the Tennessee and Virginia border. But like I said, a lot of our recovery efforts are happening down in the southeast part of the state. I know even parts of like Wilmington, which is on the coast, still aren't reachable. So there's still folks who have been evacuated from their homes who haven't been able to get back yet. And I think I saw something today in one of the newspapers that there's 24 school districts that don't know when they're going to open up. So this is going to be a long recovery effort, but our governor, Roy Cooper's been really on the front lines of this. The Department of Transportation, the environmental groups, it's sort of all hands on deck. Everybody's been really involved, really on top of it, sharing as much information as possible. But it is going to be a little bit of a long haul here, and it'll be interesting to see how that sort of interacts with the election coming up if folks can't get home. So it's a bit of a long process we're about to undertake here.
Yeah. Has there been any talk of how you could get ballots to people if they were evacuated, what that might look like in getting them the ability to vote?
Yeah, I'm sure that there has been. I know that we're coming up on the, point where absentee ballots are going to need to be sent out. And I'm sure that those conversations are happening, and I'm just not able to keep up with it all. But that is going to be very interesting to see. And early voting starts for us in the middle of October on the 17th. So we're really coming up on when the election would start. So I'm sure that there's going to be more information coming out about that sometime soon. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see, to make sure that people still know that they can vote and make sure that they have the ability to vote, regardless of, how the hurricane impacted them.
Yeah, and I know a bunch of campaigns suspended operations for a while. We had reached out to Kathy Manning's campaign to see if we could get her on, and they were just, really swamped with trying to deal with recovery efforts. So,
yeah, a lot of people did close down shop there for a few days at the very least. So, yeah.
So you mentioned your governor, who is a Democrat. But the state House and the state Senate are overwhelmingly Republican. So can you talk a little bit about how that works in the state? Or doesn't?
Right. I think that may be the more accurate way of saying it. It's certainly interesting. And it's not only that the state House and Senate are majority Republican, they have what we call a supermajority, sort of veto-proof legislature. So it's definitely been interesting to see how that works, because pretty much the Democrats have had to come up with and have come up with some very creative procedural ways of, trying to block bills and trying to create debate on the floor, trying to have discussions and dialogue. But the Republicans really haven't had to listen to any of our Democratic members because they have that supermajority. And that's, of course, I'm sure you're aware of a lot of the conversations happening down here about the extreme gerrymandering that we've got, especially on the state legislature level. That's really, I feel like the supermajority is a lot of a product of that gerrymandering. So we do have some new districts this year, so it'll be interesting to see how the new districts and the new representatives who are going to be elected, how the legislature is going to look now that we've changed those districts.
I'm trying to understand how there's a Democratic governor. So, and maybe the districting helps explain some of that. But it's such a funny thing to look at the election results over the past, 20 years or so and see so often, except in 2008, when the state went for Barack Obama. In every presidential election, it's voted for the Republican. And most Senate elections has voted for the Republican, but the governor, not that uncommonly, has been Democrat. So what's going on there? Is it that the state is that swingy? Does it come down to the personalities of the people running?
Yeah, I think it's a few different things. So I think part of it is that right now we are a swing state. At least I would consider North Carolina to be a purple state. But, it is interesting to look at North Carolina went red for Trump, but went blue for Governor Cooper. So, just looking at that, that's interesting. But then we also have a Republican lieutenant governor. So it's, it's interesting how North Carolinians vote, but that's sort of the history of North Carolina. We tend to split our votes that way. The other thing was Governor Cooper had been the attorney general for quite some time. So he was fairly well known in many communities in North Carolina. So I think that definitely helped him in 2016 win the election. But I definitely think that North Carolina is a swing state. Like you said, Obama won here in 2008. And that was in large part due to the outreach that the campaign was doing, not only in the cities, but in the northeastern part of the state and the southeastern part of the state. It made North Carolina flip blue. Whereas, right now with the gerrymandered districts, that's not necessarily possible for the state legislature because those lines are being drawn in such a way that they can't be competitive, or that if they are competitive, it's few and far between that we have competitive districts. So I do think that, while we are a blue state, that's sort of part of our culture, but also part of how we're functioning right now.
And so North Carolina as a state as of 2010 was only 68.5% white and is about 21.4% black, 8 years ago.
Right.
I feel like North Carolina, anecdotally, I have heard is a place with racial tensions and, certainly some of the gerrymandering seems to have been perhaps racially biased. What does that sort of look like in terms of politics? Does it play into the politics? Is there voter suppression the way there are in some of our other states? Do you think that race plays a big factor in the politics?
I do think that it has, especially recently. You just mentioned voter ID. We had a voter ID law on the books up until 2016, and it looked like in 2016 we were going to have that law on the books, and it was overturned just before the election, just a couple months before the election. Of course, now, again, coming up this year, we've got 6 constitutional amendments, which is pretty unheard of down here. We've got 6 constitutional amendments on the ballot, and again, one of them is a voter ID amendment. So, it definitely has been coming up, especially in the form of voter suppression, like you said. We recently had something weird happened where ICE subpoenaed voter records in a bunch of the majority districts in North Carolina, the counties, and that was seen by a lot of people as potentially voter suppression, pulling information about voters in minority districts and wanting to know their information, and in some cases how they voted, things like that. So there definitely is that fear and understanding of there are movements here to suppress votes.
So unlike some southern states that seem to be losing the young population, it feels like North Carolina is still a place with a lot of young people. And partly probably because of the large number of colleges and universities in the state. What does that political energy of young people look like in North Carolina right now? It's
exciting, to say the least. Of course, I say that working with the young Democrats here, but it's very exciting. Just this year, we've got more than, I want to say we have 24, and that was my last count, 24 young Democrats under the age of 35 running for the state legislature. We have one young Democrat running for Congress, Dan McCready, or two. We've got Dan McCready and Ryan Watts, and that's just on the state legislature and the congressional level. We've got multiple young Democrats running for school board, running for county commission, local offices, judges, sheriffs, things like that. So it's very exciting. There's a lot of young people stepping up, putting their name on the ballot and getting their name out there. And then also, there's just so much energy beyond, within campuses, within local Democratic parties, of young people wanting to be involved, wanting to have their voice heard, and wanting to get involved in the process. So it's been a very exciting time here in North Carolina, especially for young people.
Do you think that there will be higher voter turnout among young people this cycle?
I'm certainly hoping so. And that's one thing that we're working on with the Young Democrats of North Carolina. One of the things that we've been working on is called our Cardinal program. The Cardinal's the state bird here in North Carolina, so we thought we'd be clever with that. So we are working with all of our chapters to make sure that we are boosting turnout as much as possible, making sure that we're reaching as many young Democrats as we can in our get out the vote efforts and our recruitment efforts, to make sure that they know where to vote, that they've re-registered to vote if they've moved, and that we especially get them to go vote early, just in case they need to change their registration before Election Day. And so I'm certainly hoping that it does go up, and I think that young people in North Carolina know just how important the races are this year. And there's so many good state legislature candidates who are young Democrats, and I'm definitely hoping that, especially for those folks, that young people are going to turn out for them, seeing someone like them running for office.
What are the races that you're really going to be watching on November 6th?
Gosh, there's so many. I'm a total nerd, so I'll have a really wild setup on election night. But
as will we.
Definitely, I think on the congressional level, you've already mentioned, Kathy Manning. I mentioned Dan McCready, Ryan Watts. Those are races that I'm really excited about. Our state house races, we've got, off the top of my head, I can think of like Sidney Batch, Terrence Everett that I'm excited about. State Senate, we've got Michael Garrett as a young Democrat. He's in the middle part of the state. Natasha Marcus running for office. And of course, like I said, we've got some of those, folks running on the local level that I'm really excited to see get elected. But I'm a total nerd. I work in law. So I'm really interested to see how the state judicial races go. We've got the Court of Appeals and our Supreme Court that we're trying to keep blue. So that'll certainly be interesting. And of course, those amendments, those 6 constitutional amendments, which are, everybody's fighting pretty hard over those. Those are going to be really interesting to see what happens with those on election night.
I don't know about you, but I've already called off work on November 7th.
I did, actually. Those you say that, I did, and I took Wednesday off, too.
All right. Excellent. Is there anything else that you think we should know about North Carolina?
I know it tends to be that, folks will think, oh, they're down in the South. They're, just above South Carolina, right next to Tennessee. There's no way they're going to turn blue, but I think we're going to surprise some folks, and I think we're going to take back the majority in the state legislature.
I hope so. We'll be watching North Carolina. Thank you so much, Anne, for talking with me tonight. This is it sounds super exciting, and North Carolina is one of the states I've actually been to. We talked to a lot of people in states I haven't, but I have spent some time in North Carolina, and it's beautiful down there, and I hope I can get down there again soon.
We'd love to have you.
Welcome back to another episode of Two Broads Talking Politics. I am one of your hosts, Sophie, and I'm here with your other host, Kelly. Hey, Kelly.
Hello.
And tonight we are talking to Ryan Watts. He is running for Congress from North Carolina's 6th Congressional District. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. Can you just sort of kick it off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and sort of how you came to be running for Congress?
Absolutely. My name is Ryan Watts. You guys did a great job covering that part of it. I'm the Democratic nominee here in the 6th Congressional District, which makes up quite a good bit of central North Carolina. You can really kind of picture it as the counties in between Raleigh and Greensboro.